is Sam Neiman. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Fremont, Newark, and Union City. The League is producing a series of short videos, one for each ballot measure and one on evaluating ballot measures. Today's segment is on Proposition 21. This proposition would amend a state law commonly known as the Costa-Hawkins Law that restricts the scope of rent control policies that California cities and other local jurisdictions may impose. It is an initiative statute, which means it requires just a majority approval to pass. Before we move on to the pros and cons of this proposition, I'd like to say a word or two about the League of Women Voters. We are a nonpartisan organization. We do not support nor oppose political candidates or political parties. But our mission is to encourage informed and active participation of citizens in our government. We do this by working to increase understanding of major public policy issues through education of both our members and the general public. And lastly, on issues we have studied and come to a consensus upon, we work to influence public policy through advocacy. Now on to the proposition. During the 1970s and 80s, with rental cost increasing, 13 cities adopted rent control ordinances. These varied from city to city. In 1996, the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act became law. The question now is, do we want to change the current state rent control laws? A yes vote means we will change those and the rules will change. A no vote means the rules will stay the same. Currently, about 20% of Californians live in cities with rent control rules. And this is important for our landlords. Court rulings have ruled that rent control laws must allow landlords to receive a fair rate of return. Here I have a side-by-side comparison of what the current situation is and what would happen if Prop 21 passes. So right now, Costa-Hawkins has three main limits on rent control. A single-family home cannot go under rent control. There are no rent controls on properties built after February 1st, 1995, and there is no limit on rent increases when a new tenant moves in. A newer state law limits rent increases. That law is in effect until 2030. Now, if Prop 21 passes, the new rules amend contra Costa-Hawkins. Cities and counties could pass new rules for properties more than 15 years old. They can limit the rent increases to 15% or more, and it applies to landlords with housing units of greater than 2 housing units. And what that means is it applies to landlords with single-family homes. And as before, it requires landlords to receive a fair rate of return. Let's look at the fiscal effects. And these are rather challenging to determine because it depends on what local communities, the cities, the counties do. If they expand rent control, the longer term effect could be higher rent in existing properties. The quality may decrease. And with that decrease in quality, the property values may decrease. And that would be because landlords might decide to reduce maintenance to kind of work on cost. So the other thing that could happen is renters would move less often. And these are the economic effects that we think could happen, and it really depends on whether cities and counties impose stricter rent control rules. Okay, what is it in terms of revenue and cost for the cities and the state? The measure is likely to reduce state and local revenues over time, property tax being the largest effects. If communities that already have rent control expand to include more property, revenue losses could be in the high tens of millions of dollars per year. This could increase, and it could also increase local government cost if the rent control is expanded. These costs would be from very little to tens of millions of dollars per year, depending on whether the cities and counties expand, because they would have to pay more for their rent control boards. Supporting arguments. As rents rise, people are forced from their communities. This is being made worse in the pandemic. The skyrocketing rents have led to over 150,000 homeless people living on the streets. The burden of these homelessness falls on taxpayers. Many people are having trouble finding homes that they can afford. Teachers, nurses, seniors, vets are struggling to find housing. It also protects some single-family homeowners, those homeowners who have less than 3 properties. So 1 or 2 properties are protected, and it does guarantee landlords a profit, as the old law did. The opposing arguments. It makes the California housing crisis worse and by that we would have less housing available and the less affordable housing. And they believe it will make housing values go up by 20% in terms of rental costs. It doesn't address affordable housing, but it hurts homeowners. And within the law itself, there are no protections for seniors, vets, or the disabled. And lastly, 60% of voters rejected Prop 10 in 2018. Wow. Looking at the supporters and opponents of this is a tough one. There are so many organizations involved and who want to be, who are making not only their voices heard, but putting their money where the mouth is, and I'll get into that in a minute. And I would recommend that you spend a little time looking at the supporting and opposing arguments beyond what I have put here. You can look at them in the Secretary of State Voter Guide and the League of Women Voters Easy Voter. Another one is Voter's Edge. A reference of nonpartisan websites is at the end of this presentation. I did a deep dive into who was supporting and opposing this, and I think what you need to do is take a look for yourself, and you may want to do a little more research on this than what is currently available in this video. So one of the things we always recommend is look at where the money is coming from. There is a wealth of money both in support of this and in opposition. Now, the information I have up here is the top donor information, which is provided to us by the Fair Political Practices Commission. And this is an organization within the state that tracks the donations and top donors of people into committees and PACs that managed to get over $1 million in donations and has at least one donor of over $10,000. This particular data is from 9/17. The FPPC updates their data frequently, and because of that, I recommend you take a look at it right before the election. You can drill down even further if you choose, and I did for this. One of the supporting PACs collected over $16.5 million from small donors and the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, which was the highest donor. One of the PACs, an opposing PAC, was the Issues PAC of apartment owners of Greater LA. They collected over $260,000 from 500 plus, mostly small dollar donors. I failed to note that when I drilled down in the supporting PAC, though the AIDS Healthcare Foundation was the highest donor, there were also hundreds of small donors. Okay, so moving on, I talked about a list of nonpartisan sites. Excuse me. Oh, okay, here's our list of nonpartisan sites. I use a lot of them directly, but I recommend particularly all of the League of Women Voters sites because we have links to not only the ballot measures, we have links to, and this is your local league in particular, we'll have links to candidate forums and other information with regard to local elections. Our Tri-City Local League is the League of Women Voters of Fremont, Newark, and Union City. Voter's Edge is pretty comprehensive. The Easy Voter Guide that I recommended earlier is for those of you who are busy and just want to get a concise executive overview of what these ballot measures are and some information on candidates as well. I've mentioned some others. Ballotpedia is very well written. It is considered neutral and backed by a nonpartisan organization. Cal Matters is kind of fun. It's snappy. And it's good. I think it's almost game-like. It's kind of fun. The ones I use the most are the Legislative Analyst Office, the Secretary of State's website, and I pull out Cal Access because that's how I drill down into who is donating to some of these PACs, and again, the FPPC. You may notice in these presentations there's sometimes a slight difference in this list. All of us use many of them, and some of us use things that others don't, but all that you see are always nonpartisan. I encourage you to go to the sites that look most interesting to you. As you can see, I'm a bit of a nerd. I drill down into the money. But again, I would encourage you to take any site that meets your needs and go do a tiny bit of research and you're ready to vote. I thank you for voting.